Plenty of open world games have come in all shapes and sizes over the course of video game history, but among them, The Witcher 3 stands proudly as one of the best, if not greatest, of all time. What humbly started as a video game adaptation of Andrzej Sapkow's The Witcher novels by CD Projekt Red to create their very first video game, they brought to life the fantasy world of everyone's favorite, Geralt of Rivia. While not a perfect game by any means, it's still a beloved title for many fans and the reason the franchise and CD Projekt Red exist today. Its follow-up, The Witcher 2, while changing up the gameplay and storytelling, still enticed players with the world of The Witcher, just with a lot more politicking that feels like an episode from Game of Thrones. But after two major game releases and learning from their continued development, The Witcher 3 became one of the greatest games ever made. An open-world environment starring Geralt in his quest to find his adopted but well-beloved daughter Ciri, it was a grand adventure that was unlike any other open-world game. A rich setting filled with a host of characters and monsters that question the very nature of morality, an RPG system that lets you become the ultimate Witcher, a breathtaking presentation that will captivate with its fantasy world, a horse that can materialize out of nowhere,
Hello there.
ladies to thirst over. It had all the hallmarks of what makes open world games, especially fantasy ones, worth experiencing. Although I had my favorites back in 2015, a stacked year in fact, which included Bloodborne and Undertale, The Witcher 3 was my number one for that year. It was that blend of open world exploration and discovery, with finding every piece of hidden story behind the nooks and crannies of The Witcher's world. Also, no other game has yet to make me feel like the Pyro from Team Fortress 2. So, after 10 years, how does The Witcher 3 play today? With the myriad of open world titles with their own unique take on the genre, including the discovery-heavy Breath of the Wild, the cowpoke gritty western Red Dead Redemption 2, and the difficult yet beautiful Elden Ring, does The Witcher 3 still stand strong to play today?
Yen, let go of the mane.
The Witcher 3 takes place in the mature fantasy world of its namesake, where monsters, magic, politics, and racial divide drive the very nature of the world. The story of Geralt's third video game adventure is a tale that spans the culmination of his lifetime experiences as a monster-slaying witcher, his bond with his adopted daughter Ciri, and his on-and-off lover, who some consider best girl while others trash material, Yennefer. You can learn much of their backstory from the prior novels, as well as a brief synopsis from the game's character bios. The two games before it, though, mainly deal with Geralt's amnesiac arc and the political climate setup for The Witcher 3. Taking place after the Nilfgaardian invasion of the Northern Kingdoms due to the political assassination of several key figures, see issue 2 of The Witcher, Geralt, now having recovered from his amnesiac Heisei Sasaki arc, is on a trail to find Yennefer with the help of senior witcher Uncle Vesemir.
How about that? It does smell of lilac and gooseberries.
After doing what witches do best and getting hated for it by the local peasants, Yennefer makes a surprise guest appearance early, revealing that she has been working with the Nilfgaardian Empire. Wondering why she sides with the Black Ones and parting with Uncle Vesemir for now, Geralt is summoned by the Emperor of Nilfgaard himself, Emir var Emreis, who has tasked Geralt with finding his true-born daughter, Ciri. She has been spotted to return from her outworldly excursions and is currently being pursued by the Wild Hunt in their quest to obtain her power and use it for their own means. And thus begins Geralt's adventure to rescue Ciri, which takes him across different regions of the Northern Kingdom to investigate her current whereabouts. Cue the title drop! A very heroic tale for Geralt, and one that sets him up classically in his journey throughout this morally grey world to save someone he loves. While the quest to find Ciri is his primary objective, just like pretty much every open-ended RPG, the game is all about the journey. In true Witcher fashion, it's the characters, their background, and their locations that help play a part in creating a rich world teeming with stories for Geralt to explore, and sometimes on occasion, clashing with his own history as well. So yes, it kinda does sound like your typical open-world fantasy RPG, right? Something maybe akin to the Elder Scrolls games. True, if you look at its design setup, but what really sets The Witcher 3 apart from being just that, and what still makes the game shine today, is how every interaction that Geralt comes across always makes him and the player feel involved. Of course, the game's central plot is a roller coaster ride with a stellar cast that's full of complex, dramatic, and unforgettable characters. Dijkstra is a cold and calculating man, but his level of sarcasm rivals that of Geralt.
Dandelion published a sonnet recently. Second stanza, the shit uses paired couplets instead of an inserted rhyme. Surely you understand how deeply offended the poetry lover in me was.
Yennefer is harsh and demanding, but only reveals her weaknesses to one she truly loves.
We repeatedly split up, then return to one another. Something draws us to each other, but I can never be certain if it's a true feeling or merely a bit of mischief by a djinn.
The Bloody Baron is a miserable drunk with a few skeletons in his closet. Zoltan is your bro for life. Triss are some people's lifelong obsession. It's a wonderful cast, and the number one reason the story is fantastically told. But ultimately, when it comes to making the world feel more meaningful and immersive, it's the side stories that lie in wait and the background NPCs you come across that really make the game. Why a spirit still haunts the tower on Fyke Island.
Will you bring Graham here then? I so long to say goodbye.
Why a godling inhabits a supposedly haunted house in the middle of Novigrad.
Why are you tormenting her?
I'm not tormenting anyone. Scary dreams are great. What I love is when this big end chases me.
Why Jarl Udalric of Skellige suffers from outwardly whispers that demand he hurt himself. It's a myriad of different short stories, while barely even relevant to the game's main plot, that make the world of The Witcher come alive. It's that obvious sense of world building to draw the player in, but it's also how it makes you feel more than just a passing observer. Geralt, despite his belief that Witchers are to remain neutral in their views and stances, is almost always involved in many moral decisions that affect the outcome of these narratives.
You won't kill anyone, ever again.
It's how involved and reactive he is with experiencing these anecdotes that make the side questing more than just a checklist to complete. Sure, he's not really given that much in terms of choices with which to respond differently compared to other immersive RPGs, but because he's a set character with his own personality and core beliefs, his choice of given responses feels emotionally appropriate to him. It's also by virtue of Geralt having a voice that makes the scenes feel more natural to listen to, rather than player-driven choice text that you only really read out loud in your head. A design choice that works depending on the game, obviously, but Geralt being able to converse with other characters is still a stronger point for its narrative because you get to interact with the world through his voice. Even him just saying the NPC names or acknowledging their existence is already in itself more involving.
Dandelion breaking into a vault. I'd sooner expect him to choose a life of celibacy.
To put it all simply, the game gives you a great deal of storytelling to discover, and does an impeccable job at enticing you to find those experiences and immersing yourself in them. This is the biggest selling point for me, and even when I start to recall some of these stories and how they end, the narrative and the way it's told has never gotten stale for me. Very often, I found myself immersed in certain side narratives, sometimes even losing track of what I was doing prior. Or, that's just me getting distracted. I've also had similar unique story experiences in the Elder Scrolls games, as well as Red Dead Redemption 2. A bit different, but Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring share that same sense of discovery, but more with gameplay and environmental exploration, as opposed to storytelling discovery in The Witcher. I've even heard similar anecdotes with how Larian developed their questing structure for Divinity and Baldur's Gate 3 by making the side questing a fun and memorable experience while still going through the main questline. But even so, out of every open world RPG game that I've played, I don't think anything has yet come close to the sheer volume of storytelling and character interaction that The Witcher 3 offers. It's still a well-crafted world for players to find the tales that hide in every corner, and coupled with the fantastical and harsh nature of the Witcher universe, the stories are still worth hearing about and playing through today. Third-person action is the primary loop by which Geralt operates, leading to both exploration and combat when going through the world. Exploration isn't actually that unheard of from its predecessors, but it's the new open-world map structure that defines 3. Gone are the sectioned-off levels of the previous games in favor of a mostly singular continent, where Geralt will be hoofing it, riding on horseback with Roach, or even sailing to different locations. He'll also be conversing a lot with certain NPCs that he can talk to. Some with a number of dialogue inquiries and choices, but most of these options tend to either fall into the yes, no, or alternate option category. He's also the greatest bloodhound in video games on account of how good his tracking is. Come here, Geralt. Here, boy. In combat, Geralt utilizes his iconic swords. a steel one for humans, and a silver one for monsters, as well as magical signs that the Witchers are known for. Alongside this is a number of different items to help take down enemies, like a single-hand crossbow for further engagements, bombs for throwable explosives, and alchemy for temporary buffs. A very close quarters, in-your-face combat where you'll have to use your abilities appropriately while maintaining your offense and defense. He also gets to equip various pieces of armor that he can make or happen upon throughout the world. There's also the light RPG mechanics to let him pick and choose abilities, coupled with slottable mutagens to amplify certain aspects of combat, like better sword damage, sign intensity, or alchemical buffs. When all combined together to form the basis of gameplay, it's a very fun and thematic experience that I was actually very happy to go back to again. There's no specific gameplay gimmicks that I found to be exclusive to The Witcher, but it's more how well put together the systems are that still makes the gameplay loop very fun. Discovering areas and points of interest, conversing with the local population, taking on quests and contracts, tracking, combating monsters, and hopping back onto the main mission whenever progression felt appropriate. It's all of these systems coupled with the narrative that made the back and forth between storytelling and gameplay very seamless and fun. One moment you're learning about how a curse manifested itself, the next, Geralt is using his knowledge and physical capabilities to get rid of it. It was also meaningful for me to see how CD Projekt Red evolved to improve the overall gameplay, since I did get to experience all three games relatively close to each other. Where the first game system used an interesting turn-based action hybrid rhythm game with some sword capoeira, and the second game tried to transition to a third-person action combat, but was lacking a bit in refinement and fun, The Witcher 3 significantly improved upon these aspects to give its current systems. Switching between swords and items is more seamless, signs are faster and have more appropriate casting times that feel impactful in combat, potions and oils that can be used readily without having to always meditate. There's a lot of elements that have been streamlined and improved to feel a lot more fun. Difficulty was another thing that I enjoyed about The Witcher 3. Normal feels like a good setting when you're trying to learn about what The Witcher's combat is all about, especially when that first Griffin boss will beat you to the ground. But I found the Blood and Bones difficulty to feel like the sweet spot for my preferred setting because it forced me to utilize all of Geralt's resources to win fights, but not so hard that I was overtly sweating. I might just be a masochist and Dark Souls giving me Stockholm Syndrome, but I enjoyed the depth with combating harder enemies, figuring out builds to my liking, and managing Geralt's resources. It's also how the game just thematically makes you feel like a proper Witcher. Taking on monster contracts, physically tracking them, preparing for combat, going toe-to-toe with them on Razor's Edge, then collecting their bounty afterwards, feels like the Witcher experience that not even the first two games could emulate. Even on the surface, when it's basically just a monster hunting quest, it's a bit more than that because of the logistical and emotional involvement that's tied to the contract. That for me gives it another layer of uniqueness that still makes it fun to play. I think my only real gripe with the game are some small technicalities like the auto-tracking camera just not being fast enough, or some weird ones like a random high-level Leshen appearing out of nowhere. But gameplay always felt perfectly fine. For the most part. Also, Gwent. Gwent is f***ing great. It's the one mini-game within a game that I've somehow found myself to be playing a lot more than I should. It's extremely simple because of its rule set, but also stupidly addictive because of its depth and layers of tactics thanks to the different decks that are involved. Also, because there is a quest to catch 'em all, and the more rare cards being stronger to help with your deck, I didn't think I would find myself playing TCG and Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator. An amazing combination of exploration, combat, light role-playing, and Gwent that befit the gameplay design of The Witcher 3, and even with 10 years to its name, it's still extremely fun to play.
My god, it's full of stars!
10 years ago, The Witcher 3 was one of the best looking games coming out of 2015. A stacked year in fact, especially with Bloodborne, The Phantom Pain, and Arkham Knight really impressing on their graphical front. And even those games still look very impressive today. Fast forward 10 years, and the inclusion of a next-gen patch with updated visuals, The Witcher 3 still looks stupidly gorgeous. Everything from the character models, the environment, monsters, weather effects, the lighting, the romance. You could have told me that this game was released this year, and I would have been convinced. I did want to compare the visuals of the game's older patch version to see how big of a difference it was, but whenever I tried to access it or verify the files to make it work, the game just wouldn't let me. Though if you did want to see a comparison, I'm sure there's already a lot of videos on YouTube. Regardless, the fact that the developers implemented a higher texture pack for the game, which even includes several player-based mods to make it look better, just makes it easier to appreciate its graphical presentation, as well as their support to continue the longevity of the game. I'm also happy that it runs extremely well too, I think even better than it did on release. In terms of its actual art style, it's still a very convincing medieval high fantasy aesthetic, where swords and shields are the norm for weapons, along with monsters and magic being ever present. The open world environment does the art justice by presenting you with different landscapes throughout the regions, like the war-torn fields of Velen, the multi-section city of Novigrad, and the natural grasslands of Skellige. Extremely varied, and you can probably play The Witcher instead of touching grass. On the soundscape, the effects feel natural and even unnatural, with making the atmosphere come to life. Weather effects, swords clashing, boots on the ground, horses neighing, and the sounds of nature fit very appropriately to The Witcher. And on the more unnatural side, magical effects, monstrous sounds, and otherworldly chimes are the other sounds that The Witcher does best at presenting its more fantastical portion of the world. Music is phenomenal. Because The Witcher's lore is heavily rooted in European folktale, there is a very folk-like feel to the music. The orchestra is a perfect match for the game, and the best part about it is that it's not just used thematically for tone, but also still uses its themes for different paces of scenes. Whether the mood is calm, lighthearted, or serious, its folk and medieval-like atmosphere is an ever-present theme and always appears to complement perfectly. And of course, the only other part of the soundscape to rival its thematic music is the voice acting. Geralt is gruffy as ever, but when you bring out the rest of the cast to foil him, the banter, exchange of words, heated arguments, and camaraderie provides the emotional journey that The Witcher 3 excels at showing.
Geralt, in the nick of time, as always.
Zoltan, with your boot to someone's ass, as always.
Do you believe I'd drag you here in the middle of a war to discuss a rumor?
I think anyone can be wrong, even an emperor.
I had forgotten how insolent you can be.
What do you do? Who are you?
A mangy vagrant. Gone to Rodim, at your service.
Vagrant. That a profession now?
Once a merchant of mirrors. The madding crowd dubbed me Master Mirror, or the Man of Glass.
Sometimes you're a real jackass, but I love you, brother.
And sometimes you're a real blowhard. But damn it, I'd go to hell and back for you. Come here, you oaf. Damn. Broke.
A still amazing presentation that remains strong as ever on both the visual and sound front, and it's still a treat to view, even today.
Yes.
What ultimately makes the third Witcher title hold up as a video game, and especially what still makes it unique as an open world one, is how story and discovery are woven together in establishing its identity. Its sense of exploration in finding different parts of the Northern Lands, either for the sake of story or curiosity, and the tales that they contain, always manages to make the game feel alive and engaging. Of course, the main questline is Geralt's driving force, but it's how everything else tries to involve him that makes the game feel like a grand adventure. The slaying of a monster that is plaguing a town, the survival of the mages and sorceresses in Novigrad, the next successor as the ruler of Skellige, every side story feels unique and alive, and not just simply another side quest for you to do. It feels like there's a weight to the level of involvement that Geralt is in, whether it's for the most important figure or unknown individual. It's how the game treats virtually every NPC as a story that makes the exploration feel more exciting. It's what honestly makes it still stand out, even among other recent open world titles. Of course, there's also the visceral close-range combat that's more than just a spam fest, an exorbitant amount of questing and contracts for Geralt to fulfill, an RPG system that lets you customize to your heart's content, and an updated presentation that will make you go nice. And they all act as the perfect complement to the game's amazing narrative and open world design. Without them, it just wouldn't be the game that makes The Witcher 3 what it is. All of it blends well to make an unforgettable experience, and one that I think will hold up for many years to come. I look forward to seeing how the fourth game evolves to make series adventure, and hope it brings yet another amazing Witcher title. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. Thanks for sticking around. There will be more games to play and more videos coming soon, so please stay tuned if you'd like to see more. But for now, I'll see you all next time.